Dark Souls is a fun and easy to pick up game that gives its players an overall calming, easygoing, and positive gameplay experience.
No! No! What even is that thing? How am I expected to kill that soulless motherfucker?
Well, it seems I stand corrected. Allow me to rephrase. Dark Souls is actually one of the most difficult and frustrating games that exist today, even over a decade after its initial release. Its very title instills painful and gut-wrenching flashbacks into those who have played it, and if you're one of the few who doesn't have this visceral reaction, then you're either lying or just a straight-up psychopath. But even with its infamy for being so terribly hard to play, Dark Souls still has an addictive quality to it. It keeps players wanting to continue the fight. One reason for this lies in the fact that when the player dies, every soul they've collected is dropped. See, each enemy grants the player a number of souls when killed, which they can use at resting points called bonfires to upgrade their skills with. Because of this, souls become one of the player's most valuable possessions, essentially forcing them to go retrieve them when they're lost. However, if the player dies before they can do this, those souls are gone for good, regardless of how many there were. The other way that Dark Souls keeps its players roped in is by making them feel like their death is their fault. This might be odd to hear, but it's true. Enemies in this game, especially bosses, have very clearly telegraphed attacks that the player must learn in order to understand how to tackle a fight. At first, the player won't know these telegraphed attacks and will most likely feel like the fights are unfair. As the attempts increase though, so too does the understanding of the player. This understanding is what makes them keep coming back to the fight, because they know exactly what they did wrong and will continuously try to correct it and win the fight. They will continuously try to correct it and win the fight. Ooh. They will continuously try to. One thing that I love about Dark Souls is the staggering amount of unique areas that the player is able to discover and explore. Some of them aren't even that easy to come across in the first place, which makes almost any area of the game that much more interesting to explore. You want better equipment? Dunk on these two dudes with spears and roll through these crates. Want to meet some ghosts? Go behind this tree, walk down these steps, take this elevator, and walk across this bridge. As you can see, Nope. Want to see some floating heads that come towards you and explode? Of course you don't. This skeleton won't even follow you down there. No, dog, you want to have the best interaction this game has to offer? Just turn around and walk down these stairs.
Hello there. I will stay behind to gaze at the sun. The sun is a wondrous body, like a magnificent father. If only I could be so grossly incandescent.
Solar, I love you. And that's not even scratching the surface. This is just in the first hour or two of the game out of a staggering estimate of around 100 hours of gameplay. There is an ever-present motif that exists within the world of Dark Souls, an aspect of the game that the player can seemingly never get away from. I am, of course, talking about the orange inscriptions that are peppered around the game world. These are messages that have either been placed by the developers or by other players that, when interacted with, gives the player certain information. What that information actually is varies based on which inscription they interact with, but in the area the player begins in, they serve as the tutorial. All throughout the starting area, the player is able to clearly see these glowing signs on the floor that they are prompted to interact with when they get close. When the player does so, they begin to teach them how to play bit by bit. This tutorial comes to a magnificent climax with the last tutorial message teaching the player how to do a plunging attack. After walking through the barrier that is directly in front of the message, they are standing on a ledge with this very menacing and dummy-thick asylum demon staring up at them. Having just been taught that they are able to execute a plunging attack, the player walks off and performs it, and let me just say that seeing that much damage being dealt in one blow is like heroin. It's so satisfying. This brings me to a specific boss fight that I want to focus on, which is the Taurus demon. Akin to Pavlov's puppy, the player has been conditioned to correlate misty entrances with a difficult encounter, and this is no different. Something to note is that, just like the misty wall in the beginning of the game, there is an inscription on the floor in front of this one reminding the player what they were taught. Already on edge, the player trudges forward through the misty wall and across the bridge, but is stopped in their tracks when they hear the all too familiar sound of crossbow bolts hitting solid surface. With nothing to be seen to the front, the player is prompted to look behind them to find the threat. Doing this reveals the source of the sound and a means by which to reach and neutralize the threat, a ladder. The player, having made it this far into the game, should be sharp enough to realize the use of this ladder and take advantage of it. After taking out the two Arvalists, an interesting decision is given to the player. They can either use the ladder to climb back down onto the bridge, or they can hop off of this very clearly destroyed ledge. If they choose to drop off of the ledge, they will take some damage. But if they take the ladder, they are able to descend unharmed. Regardless of what the player chooses, the existence of this ledge is integral to conquering the Taurus and has been introduced in a pretty clever way. Clever still is the fact that the player has yet Leaping off of the tower ahead, the Taurus demon makes its grand entrance, which should make any sensible player instinctively and promptly turn around and run. While there is nowhere for the player to get far away from the Taurus demon, there is a way for them to get up and above it, which is through the use of the ladder. Everything that the player has been taught up until this point culminates beautifully into this one moment when the Taurus demon stares up at the player from below. The player conquers the demon, and the misty wall in the distance dissipates, indicating freedom. Not only freedom from their foe, but freedom from ignorance. This fight is a milestone for the player, a milestone that marks their graduation from a novitiate to an adequately experienced player, finally prepared to experience the game in full. There will undoubtedly be difficulties along the way, but the player will have more than enough time to master the game with a copious number of hours that they are going to spend in the punishing world of Dark Souls.